Tyree Williams was 36 years old, made $61,000 a year as a commercial plumber, and on a crisp Saturday evening in October, he sat at a dinner table in Bountiful, Utah, realizing his 2-year marriage was a complete and utter fraud. The polished surface of the $3,000 oak dining table reflected the cold, judgmental eyes of his in-laws, William and Patricia. Everything in their house was a testament to a life he didn't lead, a life of accumulated wealth, not earned skill. The crystal wine glasses, probably worth more than his monthly truck payment, shimmered under a $4,000 chandelier. Tyree, a proud black man in a world that often measured him by the wrong metrics, felt less like a son-in-law and more like a curiosity his wife, Janelle, had brought home to show her parents. He was a man whose worth was written on his hands, calluses from turning wrenches, faint scars from copper pipes. His deep brown skin seemed to absorb the room's artificial light, a stark contrast to the pale, sterile tones of the decor. He wore a simple but well-fitting $250 suit, the most expensive thing in his closet, yet he felt underdressed next to his father-in-law's casual $900 cashmere sweater. The conversation, as always, revolved around money. William, retired from a nebulous executive position at a company Tyree couldn't even name, was talking about his stock portfolio's performance. Patricia was detailing the latest European river cruise she and William were considering, a $15,000 journey down the Danube. Tyree just nodded, sipping his water, feeling the chasm between their world and his widening with every word. His world was the hum of water heaters, the sweat of a crawl space, the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. Theirs was a world of paper assets and performative leisure, and his wife Janelle was the bridge between those two worlds, a bridge he was just beginning to understand was built on very shaky ground. He had no idea that in less than an hour, that bridge would not just burn, but collapse into dust. Have you ever had a moment where the entire world seems to shift on its axis, where a single sentence reveals a truth so devastating it rewrites everything you thought you knew? Tyree was about to have his. We want to hear your stories of shocking revelations in the comments below. What happened, and how did you find the strength to move forward? The facade of their domestic life had been expertly constructed, mostly by Tyree. Their condo, a tidy 2-bedroom in the Avenues neighborhood of Salt Lake City, was a property he had purchased for $280,000 back in 2015, 3 years before he even met Janelle. It was his piece of the mountain, his anchor. But since their wedding, it had slowly transformed into a showroom for Janelle's aspirations. The sturdy, comfortable furniture he'd owned was gradually replaced by sleek, minimalist pieces she'd picked out, each with a price tag that made his stomach clench. A $2,500 white leather sofa that he was terrified to sit on after work. A $1,800 glass coffee table that was a magnet for fingerprints. His contributions were less visible, but far more essential. On a Tuesday morning 2 months prior at 6:15 a.m., the garbage disposal had jammed. Janelle had stood by the sink with a sigh of dramatic helplessness. Ugh, it's making that awful noise again. I guess you have to call someone. Tyree, already dressed in his work jeans and a company polo for Wasatch Flow Plumbing LLC, his own business, simply opened the cabinet. He didn't say a word. He pulled out a small set of Allen wrenches from a $40 kit he kept under the sink, knelt on the cold tile, and fixed it in under 3 minutes. The cost was $0 and a slight ache in his knees. He was the one who packed her lunch every morning. A turkey sandwich on whole wheat, an apple, a small bag of pretzels. It was a simple act of service, a quiet, I love you, that required no grand gestures. He'd slide the $15 insulated lunch bag into her Gellner $200 Tory birch tote that sat on the counter, a stark contrast of values in a single motion. Janelle appreciated these things in the way one appreciates a utility service. She only noticed when it wasn't working. Her focus was on the outward-facing aspects of their life. Her job as a marketing coordinator for a downtown real estate firm brought in $48,000 a year, but her spending suggested a much higher income. The joint account, into which Tyree's steady paychecks from his commercial contracts deposited like clockwork, was a constant source of anxiety for him and a limitless resource for her. He'd tried to talk to her about it once, on a Sunday evening as they were reviewing their monthly budget, or rather as he was reviewing it, and she was scrolling through Instagram. "Honey, we spent over $1,000 on restaurants this month," he said, his voice gentle. He pointed to the statement on his laptop screen. "And there's this charge here from Neiman Marcus for $850. Janelle looked up from her phone, her brow furrowed in annoyance. "It was a dress for the company gala, Tyree. I have to look a certain way. It's for my career." She gestured vaguely. "And we go out with my friends. It's called having a social life." She made it sound like his concern for their $3,000 to $400 monthly joint account balance was a personal failing, a lack of sophistication. He saw the numbers as a measure of their shared future, a house, maybe kids one day. She saw them as fuel for her present. The dress, a silk sheath he'd seen her wear once, now hung in a closet filled with similar high-priced items, a $2,400 Burberry trench coat, a collection of designer shoes that totaled over $5,000. These were not investments, they were consumables, lifestyle props. He let the conversation drop, another small concession in the name of peace. He had no idea these concessions were eroding the very foundation of his life. Each dollar she spent without a thought was a brick being removed from the house he thought they were building together. He just hadn't seen the gaping holes yet. The betrayal didn't begin with a single sentence overheard in a quiet den. It had been accumulating for months, a series of escalating moments that in retrospect formed a damning pattern of contempt. Each one was a small cut, a minor humiliation that Tyree had absorbed and excused, always giving Janelle the benefit of the doubt. The first major tremor happened 4 months before that fateful dinner. Janelle's car, a leased $52,000 Audi Q5, had developed a problem with its complex electronics system. The dealership quoted her $800 for the repair. She called Tyree in the middle of his workday, her voice laced with panic and entitlement. He was in the middle of a major repiping job at a downtown hotel, a $45,000 contract for his LLC. "The car needs a new sensor or something," she'd said, the sound of the dealership's service bay echoing in the background. "It's $800, Tyree. Can you just transfer it over? I need it fixed today." "$800?" he'd repeated, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his glove. "Janelle, can it wait until Friday when I get the draw from the hotel job?" "Wait? I can't wait. I have a client lunch tomorrow in Park City. How am I supposed to get there? In your truck?" The disdain in her voice was unmistakable. His truck, a 2014 Ford F-150 with 120,000 miles on it, was the backbone of his business. It was paid off, meticulously maintained by his own 2 hands, and worth more to him than her flashy, depreciating asset. To her, it was an embarrassment. He ended up using his business credit card to pay for her repair, a move that felt deeply wrong, like mixing church and state. It was another crack in the foundation. Then there was the incident with her parents 2 months later. Janelle had booked a 5-day trip to Cabo San Lucas on their joint credit card. The total cost, including flights, an all-inclusive resort, and what she called excursion fees, came to just over $7,000. She'd mentioned it in passing. Wouldn't Cabo be fun in the fall? But had never sat down with him to actually plan or budget for it. The charge simply appeared. When he brought it up, she'd waved it away. "We deserve a vacation. You work so hard." It was a classic Janelle maneuver. framing her indulgence as a reward for his labor. During the trip, they had a video call with William and Patricia. From the screen, their bountiful living room looked like a magazine spread. William, holding a glass of what was probably a very expensive scotch, got straight to the point. "Cabo, huh? Must be nice," he'd said, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Is that little plumbing business of yours doing well enough to support all this jet-setting, Tyree?" The question hung in the air, thick and condescending. It wasn't a genuine inquiry. It was a challenge, a reminder of his perceived station. Tyree, his luminous dark skin tanned from the Mexican sun, forced a calm smile. "Business is good, William. We're managing." "Managing," William repeated, savoring the word as if it were a cheap wine. Janelle, sitting beside Tyree in a $120 sundress, just laughed. "Oh, Daddy, don't worry. I keep a close eye on the finances." The irony was so thick Tyree could have choked on it. She was the one draining the finances, and he was the one being cross-examined. He felt a profound sense of loneliness, sitting next to his own wife on a vacation he was paying for, being made to feel like a charity case by her father. The lead-up to the Saturday dinner was the final act in this slow-motion drama of disrespect. Janelle was a bundle of nerves all week, obsessed with making a good impression, as if her parents were royalty and not just two retirees in the suburbs. On Friday afternoon, she came home with a shopping bag from Nordstrom. "I got a new dress for dinner tomorrow," she announced, pulling out a dark green sheath dress. "It's beautiful," Tyree said, and it was. "What was the damage?" "It was on sale," she said quickly. He later saw the pending charge on the banking app, $612.88, more than he made in a week after taxes. He decided not to say anything. What was the point? It would only lead to a fight, and he was tired of fighting. He was tired. Period. On Saturday evening, as they prepared to leave, the tension was palpable. He put on his best suit. He'd polished his $150 dress shoes. He made sure his fade was perfectly crisp. He wanted, just for one night, to look like he belonged. As he was adjusting his tie in the mirror, Janelle walked in, looking stunning in her new dress. She looked at him, her eyes scanning him from head to toe. "Is that the suit you wore to Marcus's wedding?" "Yeah," he said. "It's my only one." She sighed, a small, frustrated sound. "It's fine. It'll have to do." The comment stung more than she could ever know. It'll have to do. Like him. Like his life, his work, his $61,000 a year. It was all just something that would have to do until something better came along. The drive to Bountiful was mostly silent. The sun was setting over the Great Salt Lake, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, but Tyree saw none of it. He was driving into enemy territory, and his only ally seemed to be on their side. Dinner was an exercise in quiet humiliation. The main course was a perfectly cooked beef tenderloin that probably cost $150 from the butcher. The conversation was a minefield of casual classism. Patricia asked about his latest project. "So you're working in that new hotel downtown? Are you putting in the pipes for the toilets?" "The entire water and drainage system, yes, Patricia, from the mains to the fixtures," he answered, his voice even. "Fascinating," she said, with the same tone she might use for a child explaining his rock collection. William chimed in, swirling his $80-a-bottle Cabernet. "Must be good, steady work. People always need toilets." He chuckled. It wasn't a shared laugh, it was a laugh at his expense. Tyree felt Janelle's hand on his thigh, a gesture that was supposed to be supportive but felt proprietary. A handler calming the animal. He ate his meal, the expensive food tasting like ash in his mouth. He felt a chill creep over him that had nothing to do with the autumn air outside. He needed a moment. He needed his jacket. He had no idea that this simple act would be the catalyst for the end of his world and the beginning of a new one. It was 8:15 p.m., A chill had settled into the grand dining room. Or maybe it had just settled into Tyree's bones. "I'm just going to grab my jacket," he said, pushing his chair back from the table. "Feeling a bit of a draft?" Patricia offered a thin smile. "Of course, dear. We should have lit the fireplace." Tyree nodded and walked out of the dining room toward the front of the house, where a spacious den served as a repository for coats and unspoken family tensions. He'd tossed his $150 black wool coat over a leather armchair earlier. His phone was in the pocket, and he felt a sudden, inexplicable need to check it, to connect with something outside the suffocating atmosphere of this house. The den was dimly lit, connected to the dining room by a short hallway. The door was slightly ajar, creating a perfect acoustic funnel. As he reached for his coat, he heard his mother-in-law's voice, low and conspiratorial. "But are you happy, Janelle?" "Truly?" Patricia asked. The question was loaded, a weapon disguised as maternal concern. His profession. It's so physical, so uncertain. What happens if he gets hurt? Or when the economy turns and construction slows down? Tyree froze, his hand hovering over the arm of the chair. He wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but their voices carried with an unnerving clarity. He should have cleared his throat, made a noise, announced his presence. But he couldn't move. He was paralyzed by a dreadful premonition. Then came Janelle's voice. It wasn't the voice of a woman defending her husband. It was cool, pragmatic, and utterly chilling. "Oh, please," she said with a light, dismissive laugh that cut Tyree to the core. "I love him, of course, but I'm not a fool. If the money stopped, I'd leave him without hesitation." Without hesitation? The words slammed into him with physical force. He felt the air leave his lungs. It wasn't just the words themselves, but the casual, matter-of-fact way she delivered them. This wasn't a confession torn from her in a moment of anger. This was a statement of fact, a business principle, a core operating philosophy he had been completely blind to. His love for her was a feature of their marriage. Her love for him was conditional upon his financial performance. He waited for his father-in-law, William, to rebuke her, to say, "Janelle, that's a terrible thing to say," to defend the sanctity of the vows she had taken. Instead, the sound that followed was the clink of a wine glass being set down, and William's voice, thick with paternal pride. "That's our girl," William said. "Practical." Practical. The word echoed in the silent den. Tyree looked down at his own hands. Strong, capable, calloused hands that had fixed their plumbing, built his business, and held her with what he thought was a love reciprocated. He now saw them as they must see them, as temporary tools for generating income. His entire 2-year marriage, all the small acts of service, the compromises, the sacrifices, it all collapsed into a single, ugly truth. He was not a husband. He was an investment, and a speculative one at that. He slowly pulled on his jacket. The wool felt heavy, like a shroud. He slipped his phone from the pocket. No new messages. The screen glowed with the background image he'd set months ago. A photo of him and Janelle smiling on a hike up Mount Olympus, the Salt Lake Valley sprawling below them. Her arm was slung around his neck, her head resting on his shoulder. It was a perfect picture of a perfect lie. His finger hovered over the image, and for a moment, he felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just a profound, hollow emptiness. The man in that photo no longer existed. He had been erased by 3 words. Without hesitation, he turned not back toward the dining room, but toward the front door. He did not slam it. He closed it softly behind him, the click of the latch as final and absolute as a judge's gavel. The crisp night air of Bountiful hit him like a splash of cold water. He walked the 20 feet to his Ford F-150, the crunch of his dress shoes on the gravel driveway the only sound, in the quiet, affluent neighborhood. He got in. The familiar scent of leather and faint, lingering smell of copper grounding him in a reality that was his own. He started the engine, its steady rumble a comforting counterpoint to the chaos in his mind. He pulled away from the curb at 8:19 p.m., not looking back at the warmly lit house that contained the ruins of his marriage. He was 2 blocks away when his phone buzzed on the passenger seat. The screen lit up. Janelle. He stared at it, his face a stoic mask illuminated by the green glow of the dashboard. He let it ring, each chime a small, pathetic plea from a world he had already left. It rang 6 times, then stopped, silenced by voicemail. That was call number 1. He didn't drive back to the avenues. The condo was her space now, contaminated by the lie. He drove south on I-15 toward the city, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He took the exit for Sugar House, a neighborhood that felt more real, more grounded. He drove to the small, fenced-in industrial lot that housed Wasatch Flow Plumbing, LLC. He punched a code into the keypad, and the heavy gates slid open. This place was his, unconditionally. He parked the truck next to a stack of PVC pipes and just sat there in the darkness, the engine ticking as it cooled. The phone buzzed again at 8:24 p.m. Janelle, call number 2. He ignored it. A text message followed a minute later. Text, where are you? That was so rude just leaving. He read it and felt nothing. Her concern wasn't for him, but for the social disruption he had caused. He had embarrassed her. That was his crime. A third call came at 8:30 p.m., then a fourth at 8:31 p.m. He turned the phone over, face down on the seat. He got out of the truck and unlocked the door to the small cinder block office attached to his workshop. The air inside was cool and smelled of metal and thread sealant. This was his sanctuary. He switched on the single fluorescent light overhead, which flickered to life, casting a harsh, honest glare on the room. He went to the battered metal filing cabinet in the corner, a $50 purchase from a government surplus auction. He pulled open the bottom drawer, the one marked Personal. Inside was a folder containing the deed to his condo, the title clearly stating Tyree Williams, a single man, dated August 12, 2015. Next to it was another folder with the incorporation documents for his LLC, dated April 3, 2017. He had established his entire life before she was ever a part of it. He had built the ship. She had just been a passenger enjoying the cruise. He sat down at his cluttered desk and powered up the old Dell desktop computer he used for invoicing. The phone on the truck seat buzzed again. And again. Calls 5 and 6. He logged into his joint bank account. The current balance was $3,421.17. He clicked on the Statements tab and began downloading the last 6 months, saving each PDF to a new folder on the desktop he named Evidence. Then he went through the transaction history, line by line. His methodical plumber's mind took over, tracing the flow of money out of their lives. $412 for a spa day at a resort. $350 for a single brunch with her friends at a trendy downtown restaurant. A recurring $150 charge for a designer clothing subscription box. A $750 purchase from a boutique called Ember and Ash. He used the snipping tool to take a screenshot of each extravagant purchase, highlighting the date and amount. He worked silently, methodically, for over an hour. The pile of evidence grew. The total was sickening. In just 90 days, she had spent $22,480 on non-essential personal items from an account he funded with his sweat. At 9:45 p.m., he paused and looked at his phone, which he'd finally brought inside. 7 more missed calls, 13 in total, and a string of increasingly angry texts. Text, 9:02 p.m. Are you seriously not answering? This is so childish, Tyree. Text, 9:15 p.m. My parents are asking where you went. You've completely embarrassed me. Text, 9:35 p.m. Whatever, I'm getting a ride home with them. We will talk about this tomorrow. You better have a good explanation. He read the last one and almost laughed. An explanation. The irony was a physical weight. He spent the night on the lumpy, worn-out couch in the office, using his jacket as a pillow. He didn't sleep much. He just lay there, staring at the water-stained ceiling tiles, listening to the distant hum of the freeway. His phone buzzed intermittently through the night. Each buzz was a confirmation, a reminder of the choice he had made. By the time the sun rose on Sunday morning, casting long shadows across his plumbing yard, Janelle had called 27 times, and he had answered 0. His silence was his response. It was the only one she deserved. Sunday morning broke cold and clear. At 7:30 a.m., Tyree was standing in front of a commercial-grade coffee maker, brewing a pot of strong, black coffee that cost him about 50 cents a cup. He hadn't slept, but he felt a strange, wired clarity. The emotional shock had worn off, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. While Janelle was likely waking up in their $3,000 bed, expecting him to come home tail between his legs, he was planning the systematic dismantlement of their life together. His first call wasn't to her. It was to his friend Marcus at 8:02 a.m. Marcus was a fellow tradesman, an electrician who had gone through a brutal divorce 2 years ago. "Marcus, it's Tyree. I need your lawyer's name." There was a pause on the other end. "Whoa, man, everything okay?" "Not really," Tyree said, his voice flat. "But it's about to be. Just need the name." "Sarah Jenkins," Marcus said without hesitation. "Downtown, she's a killer. Costs a fortune, but she doesn't lose. She's all business. Her firm is Jenkins and Associates. She bills at $650 an hour, Tyree, but she's worth every single penny." "Thanks, man. I owe you one." "Just stay strong," Marcus said, his voice full of empathy. "Don't talk to her. Don't let her get in your head." Tyree hung up and immediately searched for the law firm on his phone. He found an email address for new client inquiries. At 8:15 a.m. on a Sunday morning, he composed a message. Subject: Inquiry for urgent divorce consultation. "Dear Ms. Jenkins, my name is Tyree Williams. I was referred by your former client, Marcus Thorne. I need to file for divorce immediately. The basis is irreconcilable differences, underpinned by what I believe constitutes financial dissipation and a fundamental breach of marital trust. I have been married for 2 years. I am the sole owner of our primary residence, condo in the Avenues, purchased prior to marriage, and a single-member LLC, Wasatch Flow Plumbing, established prior to marriage. I have compiled bank statements from our joint account from the last 6 months detailing over $20,000 in non-essential spending by my wife. I have attached scans of the condo deed, LLC formation documents, and a summary of the highlighted expenditures. I left the marital home last night and have not had contact with my wife since. I require guidance on the immediate next steps. I am available to meet at your earliest convenience. Sincerely, Tyree Williams. He attached the files he had so carefully prepared in the dead of night and hit send. He expected to wait until Monday, maybe Tuesday, for a response. He was wrong. At 9:04 a.m., his phone buzzed with an email notification from Sarah Jenkins to Tyree Williams. Mr. Williams, thank you for your detailed and organized email. Your preparation is commendable. I can see you Monday morning at 8 a.m. in my office. The address is below. Please bring originals of all documents you sent, plus your last 2 years of tax returns, both personal and for the LLC. Your friend Marcus is correct. Do not speak to your wife. Do not answer her calls. Do not respond to her texts. Your silence is your greatest asset right now. It prevents you from saying anything that could be used against you and creates a vacuum of information that will work in our favor. We will control the narrative from here on out. See you tomorrow. Sarah Jenkins-esque. Tyree read the email 3 times. A wave of relief washed over him. This was real. This was happening. He had an ally, a professional. He spent the rest of Sunday executing a quiet, methodical plan. He knew Janelle's schedule. Sunday brunch with her friends was a sacred ritual from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. At 11:30 a.m., he drove the F-150 to the Avenue's condo. The building was quiet. He let himself in with his key. The space felt alien. Her $1,200 handbag was gone from the counter. He went to their bedroom and packed a single large duffel bag. He took his work clothes, his jeans, his few good shirts. He took his father's old $89 Timex watch from the nightstand. He took his toiletries from the bathroom, leaving her expensive creams and serums, a collection worth hundreds of dollars, untouched. He took nothing that she had bought, nothing that felt like it belonged to her world. The entire operation took less than 20 minutes. As he walked out, he glanced at the living room, at the white leather sofa and the glass table. It looked like a hotel lobby, impersonal and cold. He locked the door behind him, knowing he would never sleep there again. Back in his truck, he checked his phone. The call log was a testament to her rising panic. 38, 39, 40. The texts had shifted from anger to a pleading confusion. Text, 10:15 a.m. Tyree, where are you? Are you hurt? I'm starting to worry. Text, 12:30 p.m. I'm at brunch and everyone is asking where you are. Just text me back so I know you're okay. He silenced the phone and drove back to the yard in Sugar House. He spent the afternoon gathering the documents Sarah had requested, organizing them into a neat portfolio. He felt a grim satisfaction in the task. This was his work now. Not sweating pipes, but dismantling a life built on lies. By the time he tried to sleep that night, the missed call count had reached 46. One more would come in the morning. The final frantic ping before the hammer fell. Monday morning arrived with the steely gray light of a Salt Lake City dawn. At 7:45 a.m., Tyree sat in the starkly modern waiting room of Jenkins & Associates. The firm occupied the 20th floor of a glass tower downtown, a world of polished concrete floors, chrome accents, and panoramic views of the Wasatch Front. It felt a million miles away from the grease and grit of his plumbing yard. He wore a clean work shirt and his best jeans, his worn leather work boots planted firmly on the floor. He held a worn leather portfolio containing the story of his marriage, told through deeds, bank statements, and tax returns. He was not intimidated. He was prepared. At precisely 8 a.m., a woman with sharp, intelligent eyes and hair pulled back in a severe bun emerged. "Mr. Williams, I'm Sarah Jenkins. Please come in." Her office was as precise and formidable as she was. One wall was a floor-to-ceiling window. The other was lined with law books. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Let's see what you have." Tyree laid out the documents on her massive mahogany desk. The original condo deed, the LLC paperwork, the tax returns showing his $61,000 salary, and the modest profits from the business. And finally, the printouts of the joint bank statements, with Janelle's frivolous expenses highlighted in bright yellow. Sarah Jenkins put on a pair of $500 designer glasses and examined each document with unnerving focus. She was silent for nearly 10 minutes, her only sound the rustle of paper. Tyree just sat, waiting. He trusted the process. He trusted the facts. Finally, she looked up, a ghost of a smile on her lips. "Mr. Williams, you've made my job incredibly easy," she said. "The condo is your separate property, no question. The LLC is your separate property. Utah is an equitable distribution state, but in a short-term marriage of only 2 years, with this kind of documented financial dissipation by one party, equitable does not mean 50-50. It means we protect your assets and hold her accountable for her waste." She leaned forward. "Here is the plan. First, we filed the petition for divorce this morning. It will include a motion for exclusive use of the separate property marital home, which means she will be legally required to move out. Second, you are going to the bank immediately after you leave here. You will close the joint account and transfer the full balance into a new account in your name only. We will account for her half of the remaining funds in the final settlement, but for now, you cut off the supply line. Third, we will have her served with the papers today, at the condo. The shock value is a powerful strategic tool. The strike was planned with military precision. An hour later, at 9:30 a.m., Tyree walked into the branch of the bank where they held their joint account. He sat down with a personal banker and explained the situation calmly. He presented his ID and a letter Sarah had drafted. 15 minutes later, the joint account was closed. The remaining balance of $1,834.52 was converted into a cashier's check made out to Sarah Jenkins' trust account. He then opened a new business account for Wasatch Flow Plumbing and a new personal checking account, both solely in his name. The financial umbilical cord was severed. At 10:15 a.m. from her office tower, Sarah Jenkins electronically filed petition for divorce, year Dev 2024-1138, with the 3rd District Court of Salt Lake County. At 11:03 a.m., Tyree was driving his F-150 up Parley's Canyon, heading to a commercial job in Park City. The sun was bright, the air clean. His phone rang. The screen glowed. Janelle. He looked at the call log. It was the 47th missed call since Saturday night. He let it ring, a final, unanswered siren song. As it went to voicemail, a new notification appeared, a text message, then another, and another. The dam had broken. He pulled over at a scenic overlook and read them. Text, 11:05 a.m. Some guy just showed up and served me with divorce papers? Is this a joke? Text, 11:06 a.m. Tyree, what is this? What is marital waste? What is exclusive use of the home? You're kicking me out? Text, 11:08 a.m. I just went to buy coffee and my card was declined. You closed the bank account? Text, 11:10 a.m. This is because of what I said Saturday, isn't it? I was just talking to my parents. It didn't mean anything. It was just talk. Text, 11:15 a.m. Tyree, please pick up the phone. You can't do this. I love you. We can fix this. Text, 11:20 a.m. My parents are going to kill me. What am I supposed to do? Tyree read the messages one after another, and the vast, hollow feeling he'd had in the den was replaced by something else. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't revenge. It was the cold, clean feeling of justice, of consequences. He put the phone back on the passenger seat, put the truck in drive, and continued up the mountain to work. The consequences for Janelle cascaded, not with the dramatic crash of a tidal wave, but with the slow, grinding certainty of erosion. Each loss was a direct result of the life she had chosen to live and the man she had chosen to underestimate. The world she had built on his foundation crumbled, and she was left standing in the rubble. The first and most immediate consequence was financial. With the joint account closed, her lifeline was gone. Her marketing coordinator job paid her a take-home salary of roughly $3,200 a month, an amount that barely covered the minimum payments on her personal credit cards, which held a staggering combined balance of over $14,000. Her own personal savings account, he would later learn through discovery, contained a pathetic $287. The river of his income that she had used to fund her lifestyle had run dry. The $350 brunches, the $400 spa days, the constant stream of new clothes. It all came to an abrupt and brutal halt. The second consequence was shelter. Sarah Jenkins' motion for exclusive use of the condo was granted by the court on a temporary basis within a week. Janelle was served with a legal notice giving her 30 days to vacate the property. The Avenue's condo, which she had treated as her personal showroom, was legally and unequivocally his. The shock of this was profound. She was forced to pack up her $2,400 Burberry coat and her extensive collection of designer shoes and move back home, At 34 years old, she was relegated to her childhood bedroom in her parents' house in Bountiful, a floral wallpapered monument to her failure. The daily humiliation of living under William and Patricia's disappointed gaze was a punishment more potent than any court order. The third consequence was her mobility and status. The lease for the $52,000 Audi Q5 was solely in her name. The monthly payment was $780. After 2 months of missed payments, the letters started arriving. 3 months after the divorce filing, the car was unceremoniously repossessed from her parents' driveway in the middle of the night. Her primary symbol of success was gone, leaving her to borrow her mother's 10-year-old Lexus. The fourth consequence was the debt. In the final divorce settlement 6 months later, Sarah Jenkins successfully argued that the $22,480 Janelle had spent on personal, non-essential items in the months leading up to the separation constituted marital waste. The judge agreed. That entire amount was calculated and assigned to Janelle as her sole responsibility in the division of assets. She wasn't just left with nothing. She was left with a significant 5-figure debt that would follow her for years. The fifth consequence was social. Her circle of friends, the ones who had been the audience for her performative generosity, slowly began to drift away. When she could no longer pick up the $350 brunch tab or suggest spontaneous shopping sprees, her phone rang less and less. She was no longer the fun, carefree center of the group. She was the 34-year-old divorcee living with her parents, complaining about legal bills. Perhaps the most fitting consequence came in the form of her father, William, the man who had praised her for being practical. 8 months after the divorce was finalized, Tyree heard through a mutual acquaintance that William had to co-sign a loan for Janelle to buy a car, a 7-year-old, $4,000 Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door. Tyree could picture the scene at the used car lot. William, his face a mask of grim disappointment, signing his name to a high-interest loan for his daughter, the man who managed a vast portfolio now underwriting a pittance. He had advised her to have a contingency plan, and in the end, he had become it. The practicality he so admired had led her right back to his doorstep, her hands empty. A year passed. The sharp edges of the betrayal had softened, worn smooth by time and purposeful work. It was a Tuesday evening in early autumn, and Tyree was at his yard in Sugar House. The setting sun cast a warm, golden light over the Oquirrh Mountains to the west, painting the sky in hues of orange and deep purple. The air was cool and smelled of dust and the metallic tang of his trade. He wasn't alone. He was standing over a workbench with a young man named Kevin, his new apprentice. Kevin was 20, eager, and reminded Tyree of himself 15 years ago. "See how the solder flows into the joint when the copper's at the right temperature?" Tyree said, his voice calm and steady. "You don't force it. You heat the fitting, not the solder. You let the heat draw it in. It's all about preparation." He found a deep, unexpected joy in teaching. Passing on a tangible skill, a real craft, felt more valuable than any stock portfolio. It was a different kind of wealth, one you built in others. Wasatch Flow Plumbing was thriving. He'd hired 2 more experienced plumbers to handle the increasing number of commercial contracts he was winning. His personal income had nearly doubled, touching $115,000 that year, but the number meant less to him now. It was a byproduct of his work, not the goal. The real profit was his peace of mind. His Sundays were different now. There were no more tense, obligatory drives to Bountiful for dinners that felt like inquisitions. Instead, he'd get in his trusty F-150 and drive up Big Cottonwood Canyon. He'd park at the trailhead for Lake Blanche or Brighton Lakes and just walk. He'd hike for hours, the only sounds the crunch of his boots on the trail, his own steady breathing, and the wind whispering through the aspen trees. The silence of the mountains wasn't empty. It was full of presence. It was a healing balm. He was rebuilding his life on a foundation of his own making, a structure built of self-respect and quiet confidence. He thought about Janelle sometimes, not with anger or bitterness, but with a kind of distant clinical pity. He'd heard through Marcus that she had found a job as a receptionist at a dental office, making about $19 an hour. She was still living with her parents. He pictured her in that floral bedroom, a prisoner of her own practicality. He had long ago forgiven her, not for her sake, but for his. Forgiveness was the act of unclenching his own fist, of releasing the weight of her betrayal, so that he could continue his climb. He had met her at the courthouse for the final signing of the papers. She had cried and said she was sorry, that she had made a terrible mistake. "I know," he had said, his voice gentle but firm. "I wish you well, Janelle." And he meant it. Her future was her own to build or to squander. He was busy building his. In the end, he realized what true wealth was. It wasn't a number in a bank account, a leased luxury car, or a closet full of designer clothes. True wealth was the skill in your hands. It was the respect you earned from your clients and your crew. It was the quiet strength to walk away from a deal that was costing you your soul. It was the peace you found in your own company on a mountain trail, with the whole world spread out at your feet. True wealth is building a life with a foundation so solid that when the storms come, you are the one left standing. The journey to self-worth often begins with a painful ending. We believe that every person has the right to be valued for who they are, not what they have. If you've ever had to rebuild your life from the ground up, share one thing in the comments that gave you strength during that time. Your story could be the light someone else needs to find their way out of the dark. Thank you for being a part of the Love Beyond Pride community.